I'm going to touch on a couple topics here today, as there's a lot of rumors the past couple days regarding the Chicago Cubs. Let's first start with this tidbit from David Kaplan about potential trade discussions between the Cubs and the Seattle Mariners.
A lot of rumor out there, and I made some calls today, and there's some smoke here. We'll see if there's fire. Cubs reported looking at a high-end starting pitcher via trade, not in free agency, and are reportedly involved in trade talks with the White Sox on Garrett Crochet and the Mariners on Luis Castillo. Winter meetings begin Sunday in Dallas. We'll have a Cubs recap podcast. Gordon Whitmire will join me next week from Big Dallas.
So this is the first I've heard Luis Castillo's name thrown into the mix here. Everyone assumed if we were trading with the Mariners, it would be for one of their young pitchers, which they obviously don't want to part with. But if it's Castillo that's being discussed, I would assume it would perhaps be a one-for-one trade of Castillo for Cody Bellinger. Castillo is signed through 2027 and is getting almost $22 million per year, while Bellinger is going to make $27.5 million in 2025, and he has a player option for 2026. So the Cubs would be taking on more long-term money in the deal. And everybody knows that the Mariners need offense desperately. Now, do I like this trade? Well, on the surface I am fine with it. The Cubs need pitching help, and losing Bellinger isn't going to hurt too bad, but I do have some reservations about this for a couple particular reasons. The Cubs need a bona fide ace and don't have one. This topic is particularly frustrating for me because I see so many Cub fans saying the opposite. They claim the Cubs have a good enough rotation already, that Steele is our ace and Imanaga is a number 2. But in reality, Steele is a number 2 on his best days, and Imanaga is going to regress in 2025. Steele is a number 1 and Imanaga is a number 2 on the Cubs staff, but that's because the Cubs staff isn't very good. As you can see in these two pictures, the Cubs starting pitching staff was 16th overall in WAR in 2024 and 17th in FIP. They are a middle-of-the-pack rotation, not nearly good enough to win the team a World Series. As I have said ad nauseum, every year you don't win the World Series is a failure. I don't think in terms of just winning the division. That's a dubious honor. It's World Series or bust, each and every year. If you're not always trying to win the World Series, then don't own a team. To get to and possibly win a World Series, the Cubs pitching staff is not nearly good enough. This is why they need a true ace, not a fake ace like Steele. Get a true ace, knock every other starter down a peg, and then we have a potential World Series rotation. This is why the Matthew Boyd signing is infuriating, because he's just more filler, more depth, which is the Cubs' favorite word, and another number 4-5 type starter. The Cubs have plenty of those already. Boyd is not going to give this team anything that Assad, Brown, or Wisniewski couldn't give them. So back to Castillo. My reservations about him is because, like I said, the Cubs need a true ace, and Castillo isn't it. Not anymore. He's turning 32 years old this month, his average fastball velo has dropped 5 seasons in a row, his FIP has declined 3 seasons in a row, and his WAR has declined 4 seasons in a row. Pitchers have historically gone into their decline years once they hit 30, and Castillo is no exception. I would be fine with this move if the Cubs were going to pencil him in as our number 4 starter, have Steele at number 2, Imanaga at number 3, and Taillon at number 5 with an actual ace still to come, but if they make this trade, they're going to paint it as Steele is our ace with the rest of the rotation being Castillo, Imanaga, Taillon, and Boyd. That rotation doesn't get us to the World Series. That rotation is old and is severely lacking good enough stuff. You can see here, Justin Steele's WAR was tied for 35th best in baseball among starters, and his FIP was 15th best. Hardly ace-like numbers. Imanaga was tied with Steele at 35th best in WAR, with his FIP being 43rd best. Remember I said Imanaga was going to regress in 2025? Well, look at the disparity in his ERA and his FIP, almost a full run higher, and his batting average on balls in play was an abnormally low 264, when the normal range for that is 290 to 310. This all spells out regression, like I said. Nobody in the league had seen him before, so he did better than expected, but that will not be the case in 2025. Thus, my point that this rotation, even if they add Castillo, still is not nearly good enough. Which brings me to the other rumor we all heard, which was the Cubs being involved in the trade talks with the White Sox for Garrett Crochet. Now, I would be all for doing this trade, because Crochet represents the guy with true ace potential that the Cubs desperately need, as evidenced by his 8th best WAR among starters this year, and his 5th best FIP, which you can see was lower than his ERA, while he maintained a batting average on balls in play slightly above the normal range, which proves that even while he was slightly unlucky this year, he still put up true ace-like numbers, and he's only 25. However, I will believe this trade when I see it. Just doesn't feel like something the Cubs would do. It makes too much sense, and we all know the Cubs almost never make moves that make sense.